Welcome back, everybody. It's 5 a.m. How is everybody doing? Yes, I know it's been over a week since my last podcast update, but a lot has been going on between me finding a new place to live and, on top of that, finals coming to a conclusion. Yes, I didn't cover any more information on study tips, but the basics that I covered is essentials that everybody needs. So I'm going to go ahead and cover something new. Within the realm of learning skills, it's still on the topic of study skills, critical thinking. Okay? So the question here is, what is critical thinking? Well, let's think about that for a minute, shall we? Which is kind of the whole point of this podcast. Critical thinking is the ability to think clearly, rationally, and understanding the logical connection between ideas. It has been the subject of much debate and thought since the time of early Greek philosophers, such as Plato and Socrates, and has continued to be a subject of discussion into the modern age. However, that doesn't mean that everyone is capable of doing this, so I digress. It might be described as the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking, if you are capable of doing that is. In essence, critical thinking requires you to use your ability to reason. It is about being an active learner rather than a passive recipient of information. In other words, you don't just take in everything that you hear, you actually think about it. Critical thinkers rigorously question ideas and assumptions rather than accepting them at the face value. They will always seek to determine whether the ideas, arguments, and findings represent the entire picture, and are open to finding that they often do not. Critical thinking will identify, analyze, and solve problems systematically rather than by intuition or instinct. I'm sorry, but not all the time is intuition and instinct the best thing that you can use. Okay? So, going into this head first, someone with critical thinking can use the following skills, okay? They can understand the links between ideas, determine the importance and relevance of arguments and ideas, recognize, build, and appraise arguments, identify inconsistencies and errors in reasoning, approach problems in a consistent, systematic way, reflect on the justification of their own assumptions, beliefs, and values. In other words, critical thinking is about things in certain ways so as to arrive at the best possible solution in the circumstances that the thinker is aware of, or in a more everyday language, it is a way of thinking about about whatever is presently occupying your mind so that you come to the best possible conclusion. Yeah. Continuing where we left off, critical thinking is a way of thinking about particular things at a particular time. It is not the accumulation of facts and knowledge or something you can learn once and then use it in that form forever, such as the 9 times table that you learned when you were in school. Okay? The skills we need for critical thinking are as follows. I'm going to go ahead and cover as much as I can. I'm not going to go too in depth with them, as you already know. The skills that we need in order to be able to think critically are varied and include observation, analysis, interpretation, reflection, evaluation, interference, explanation, problem solving, and decision making. Specifically, we need to be able to, how can I word this where it makes sense? Think about a topic or issue in an objective and critical way. I know I mentioned that before, but just follow me here, okay? Identify the different arguments that are in relation to a particular issue. Evaluate a point of view to determine how strong or valid it is, okay? And then recognize any weaknesses or negative points that there are in the evidence or argument. This also works really well in the courtrooms, okay? Notice what implications there might be behind a statement or argument. Provide structured reasoning and support for an argument that we wish to make, okay? The critical thinking process isn't as complicated or convoluted as many other processes, but it's not as simple in the same regard, okay? You should be aware that none of us think critically all the time, okay? Sometimes we think in a way, almost any way but critically. For example, when our self-control is affected by anger, grief, or joy, or when we are feeling just plain bloody-minded, to put simply. On the other hand, the good news is that our critical thinking ability varies according to our current mindsets. Most of the time, we can learn to improve our critical thinking ability by developing certain routine activities and then applying them to all problems that present themselves. Once you understand the theory of critical thinking, improving your critical thinking skills takes persistence and just practice. So, I mean, just think about it. I got a couple of exercises here that might help you, okay? Think of something that someone has recently told you. Then ask yourself the following question, okay? Who said it? Someone you know, someone in a position of power or authority. Doesn't matter who told you this. These are thoughts to consider. What did they say? Did they give facts or opinions? Did they provide all the facts? Or did they leave anything out? Where did they say it? Was it in public or private? Did the other person have a chance to respond or provide an alternative account? When did they say it? Was it before, during, or after an important event? Is timing even all that important? Or why did they say it in the first place? Did they explain the reasoning behind their opinion? Were they trying to make someone else look good or bad? Or how about this one? How did they say it? Were they happy, sad, angry, indifferent? You're going to hear this one a lot from the police. Did they write it or say it? Could you understand what was being said? These are different viewpoints, different ways to ask the very same question, but get more answers out of it. It's very, very effective in everyday life. All right. With those thoughts in mind, what are you aiming to achieve? Okay? I'm asking this on purpose because I want to know, if you're even listening to this podcast in the first place on critical thinking, are you truly trying to decipher how to improve your skills or how to understand the people around you who ask these very same questions so you're not caught off guard? Well, regardless of the reasoning, one of the most important aspects of critical thinking is to decide what you're aiming to achieve and then make a decision based on a range of possibilities. So even if you're not trying to improve it, it will help you improve it indirectly. Okay? Once you have clarified that aim for yourself, you should use it as a starting point in all future situations requiring thought and possibly further decision making where needed, of course. Make your workmates, family, or those around you aware of your intention to pursue this goal. You must then discipline yourself to keep on track until changing circumstances means you have to revisit the start of the decision-making process again. However, there are things that get in the way of simple decision-making. We all get carried away we all carry with us a range of likes and dislikes, learned behaviors, personal preferences, things that are developed throughout our lives. They're all the hallmarks of being a human, of course, but, a major contribution to ensuring we think critically is to be aware of these personal characteristics, preferences, and biases, and make allowances for them while still considering possible next steps, whether they are the pre-action consideration stage or a part of the rethink caused by unexpected or unforeseen impediments to continued processes progress of that sort. The more clearly we are aware of ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses, the more likely our critical thinking will be productive. Keep that in mind. And then there's the benefit of foresight. Perhaps the most important element of thinking critically is foresight. Almost all decisions we make and implement don't prove disastrous. They don't prove disastrous. If we find reasons to abandon them, however, our decision making will be infinitely better and more likely to lead to success if, and only if, when we reach a tentative conclusion, we pause and consider the impact on the people and activities around us. Okay? The elements needing consideration are generally numerous and varied, and in many cases, consideration of one element from a different perspective will reveal potential dangers in pursuing our decision. For instance, moving a business activity to a new location may improve potential output considerably, but it also can lead to a loss of skilled workers if the distance moved is too great. Which of these is more important as a consideration? Is there some way of lessening the conflict? And these are thoughts that you have to consider. These are the sort of problems that may arise from incomplete critical thinking. A demonstration, perhaps, of critical thinking, of the critical importance of good critical thinking, are the examples I just gave you. So, yes. So, moving on. In conclusion, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Critical thinking is aimed at achieving the best possible outcome in any situation. In order to achieve this, it must involve gathering and evaluating information from as many different sources as possible. Critical thinking requires a clear, often uncomfortable assessment of your personal strengths, weaknesses, and preferences, and their possible impact and decisions you make. Critical thinking requires the development and use of foresight as far as this is possible. Of course, I'm not telling you to look into the future. That's not possible. As Doris Day sang, the future is not ours to see. So keep that in mind. On that note, implementing the decisions made arising from critical thinking may take into account an assessment of possible outcomes and ways of avoiding potentially negative outcomes, or at least lessening their impact so they're not as bad. With that being said, critical thinking involves reviewing the results of the application of decisions made and implementing change where possible. Okay? It might be thought that we are overextending our demands on critical thinking and expecting that it can help to construct focused meanings rather than examining the information given and the knowledge we have acquired to see if we can, if necessary, construct a meaning that will be acceptable and useful at least. Okay? After all, almost no information we have available to us, either externally or internally, carries any guarantee of its life or appropriateness. Neat step-by-step instructions may provide some sort of trellis or on which our basic understanding of critical thinking can blossom, but it doesn't and cannot provide any assurance of certainty, utility, or longevity. So basically, it's all, dependent on you. With that being said, that does leave two more topics to cover. Critical thinking and fake news, stuff that isn't really important, and critical reading. Like I said before, this is Food for Thought, Thoughts If It Were You by Gentrics. If you have a topic, something that you want me to cover, hit me up on my Facebook, on my Instagram, or here on Anchor, and I'll definitely cover it. Thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your day.